Well, I've Hunter. Welcome to the show.
Good morning.
Um, we spoke shortly after the Stockholm race, and you said you were aching a lot, and it affected you more than maybe other races have done in the past. How are you feeling now, and why do you think that maybe was?
Uh, I hit this last trip, as I was saying to you earlier, just didn't go really well for me. Like I go over there a lot. I think I went over 5 times last year, cumulatively, probably 2 to 3 weeks at a time each time. So a fair amount. And I just didn't sleep at all. I didn't sleep. I got there and landed off the plane originally at 10:30 at night in London and went to bed at 12:30, was up at 4:30 to go compete with George. And then I just didn't sleep a bunch of nights and I sweat through the night, all that kind of stuff. Had a decent week and went and raced Stockholm. And I didn't sleep very well in Stockholm or anything like that. And that's not excuses by any means. It's just an honest answer. Like I just didn't adjust this go around. You know, however, like lots of people are like, man, I just don't get how you do the travel. And I've never had really much of an issue, but it hit me this time. And I can honestly say, like, I haven't been training like for HYROX. I haven't been training intensely. I haven't been doing the hard work. You probably see some content of us doing stuff online, but that more so was to help get George ready to be ready for doubles. The type of sessions that I do to get ready for HYROX as an individual are very specific, very intense, and it takes lots of loading specifically to get to a 53. And like I'll tell you, I did a HYROX every single weekend from January, like basically February 1st until I did Barcelona when I set the world record last year because I was like, I had so little time. I was like, I'm just going to do a HYROX every single weekend just to jumpstart the year. I've got no time to get adjusted. And when I first started, I was doing HYROX at paces of like 60 minutes. And then all of a sudden I was able to chop it down. I just showed up right away and ran a 53, and my body just maybe had the potential, but wasn't like, you're supposed to warm up the tires a little bit before you get on the track. I didn't do that, and it took a bite out of me.
Okay, but it obviously like you obviously still did all right. Still did pretty well, but presumably, if you think there's more in the tank when you are sharpening the axe, so to speak, and you're more in HYROX training season, you think there's more to come?
Yeah, I don't have a doubt in my mind. I mean, if you even take the time off of my burpee mistakes, you're looking at a low 53, and uh, I don't have a doubt in my mind that I'll take 60 to 90 seconds this season. So I could have a high 51, low 52.
Okay.
And like a lot of it just has to do with like looking at my weights, looking at the style of training that we're doing. I've talked to you about this stuff before. I'm pretty like analytical about the whole thing, and I have sticky notes all over the place. And then I wake myself every morning. Like I've known everything about myself for the past almost 10 years. So I know where I can go.
You said in your like post race interview, like you think of this as beer drinking season still that you're still in. How do you think about your year? Like, is it that you want to train for HYROX? Like, obviously you're looking presumably like for your performance to be at the start of June at the World Championships. But do you try in an ideal world, would you be condensing that into, I don't know, like 5 months or something like that? Is that what you'd ideally like to do?
I really only think you should train for High Rocks for like 3 months.
Right.
I think as a professional athlete versus a recreational athlete, like as the periodization goes, it's let's start from May 26th. Afterwards, you should take like a month of decompressing down, which I did. And I went into hiking and everything like that. And then you should look at your weaknesses and then start to kind of bring it up, which for me has always been cardio. Like I could always get better at cardio because I'm really strong for the field. And I did a bunch of Ironmans, and you should keep on pushing that through to about Christmas. And then you should start layering on things about, 5, 6 months out, which are specific, but not so specific that you get burnt out on it. So, ideally, I wouldn't really do my first race until about March. And then from there, I would try to set a world record in April. And then I would disappear for 2 months and then go race world championships. Like that would be the perfect formula. Right now, I've been doing a lot of bodybuilding, biking, all that kind of stuff. And I'll tell you, man, like after putting together some serious blocks of training for this stuff, you just start to feel like this starts to go out, and then a knee starts to go out, and a hip starts to go out. And, in reality, the elite athletics is really just a dance of how far you can go without injuring yourself. And the one thing I've recognized is as soon as I start training CrossFit or HYROX, I always start to get the tweaks and twinges. It's just not worth it.
Okay, all right, makes sense. Um,
Yep.
in your post-race interview, another thing I noticed you said a couple of times was uh, like you talked about world records with your team, and you said like you sort of referred to everything as we. So do you feel like you've got a team around you? Is it your coaches? What is we?
I guess it's like the royal we would be the term.
Okay.
I guess at this point, like I have 6 employees, I have one coach, I have a bunch of mentors, I have my family, and the bigger this keeps on getting, the more people who are involved in it. Like, yeah, I'm the guy doing all the workouts and everything like that. I'm the guy doing all the traveling around, but you know, when I showed up at the race, I forgot my clothes. So my camera guy had to run back and go get my clothes for me before right at the start of the race. And it would have been annoying for me to run back there and back forth out in the cold and all that kind of stuff. And it just takes all these little moves. And when you're moving 1,000,000 miles an hour, I have to admit, like, it's getting more and more complicated to do things by myself. And I have to include my team and everything when I say, I would feel it would be a dishonest answer saying that this was a me effort.
Mhm.
There's a lot of people involved. And I have to also think about like the sponsors who take care of me also, like the things that we're doing at the capacity we're moving at. A lot of it has to do with being able to fund what I'm doing. Represent and Puma coming in to back me this season. That's a big step up. And what that allows me to do is pay for a really high level coach and all the equipment that it takes to analyze all the work that we're doing. And it's so much more. And I like reaching further and further and further towards the tip of the spear on these kind of sports. Like what I used to do in training is very different from now. And the amount of products that I'm taking, the efforts that I'm doing, the technology that's associated to get all the data that we want to have, it's expensive. And I couldn't do it without the team that I have and the sponsors that I have. So that's why I said that.
Okay. All right. I was going to ask you a bit about this later on, really, but as you've mentioned, the sponsors and the companies coming into the sport, do you feel like are you excited about the trajectory that HYROX is on and the companies that are coming in? And can you see that continuing? Is it and does that differ from previous sports that you've done? Like you've been in this sort of world for years, really.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm more excited about the business side of thing than I am actually the sport. Uh, I went across from Spartan Race, Tough Mudder, uh, CrossFit, like every single sport that I've been involved in, I've been pretty much the top. And I've been friends with the CEOs to the point where I could call them, they'll pick up the phone and all the businesses associated with it. And nothing's ever had the momentum that HYROX has had. I quit a year and a half ago because I was like, this thing ain't gonna catch momentum. And then all of a sudden I turn my back for 2 seconds and it blows up. And I really couldn't have predicted it. There was a lot of talk about it going up, and then the partnerships getting involved, the sponsors that I know that are getting involved, the calls that I'm getting every single day. I mean, my lifestyle is 5 times what it was 2 years ago. I made $19,000 2 years ago doing HYROX, and just the amount of opportunities that have increased beyond that, it's a whole nother world. And there's this opportunity where you can see like everybody who is in fitness is now a HYROX coach. You can see everybody who had a product is now a HYROX product. Like it's pretty interesting how people change gears. And I hate to say this because CrossFit is what got me started, but unfortunately, CrossFit has lost its flair and it's diminishing at a rapid rate. And the brands associated with it are noticing, the athletes who are invested in it are noticing, the fans are noticing. Gyms that used to be like super obsessed with CrossFit are now reaching out to me to start doing programming for HYROX, like all that kind of stuff. And you're just like, whoa. So you sit here and you're like, this is the greatest opportunity ever. Like, you might as well get your nets out and start getting ready to catch fish because the flood is coming.
Nice. Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
Uh, I just want to talk about a couple of things from the Stockholm race, if that's okay. One
Yeah.
was I can't remember who you were talking to be honest, on the stage afterwards, and you said about how like typically you might do your runs at around threshold, and then like for this, like you sort of went beyond that really, and
Yeah.
it was pretty grim. Uh, can you talk about that some more? What was it grim? Did it impact your stations? Yeah, can you discuss that some more?
Yeah, I sat down with my coach and we looked at stuff and we had barely got to I'd known him for a long time, but we had barely worked together. And he goes, "Hey man, I just want you to run way faster and see what happens." And I was like, God, I don't really want to fuck up my first race of the year, dude. And he's just like, "Just do it." I was like, "All right, whatever. Got nothing to lose." And like we did the math. We were really trying to hold 520K, sorry, 320Ks. And I think I was holding 323 to 328. And, it's impossible to tell with these courses. It could be a foot or two short, whatever. But it was pretty consistent. And the idea is like, we're just looking at the math, or it's like, hey, man, like you're going to get the most. If we could just pull 5 seconds off per run, you're just immediately 40 seconds off, which I basically was. And he goes, you're just going to have to see what happens in the stations. And so if you think about it, I'm usually going in at threshold. So like, let's just say my heart rate max is here. Like I'm going in at threshold, which is a couple inches below the line. And I'm showing up to stations and I'm just being this bulldog at the stations. I'm skiing faster than everybody. I'm pushing faster than everybody, pulling, doing burpees. And usually near the end of the race, I just kind of start to let go because I've already got the lead that I need and there's no point in doing extra damage. This, I was just like, push your absolute limits at like your mile repeat pace and just go and see what happens. And I would show up to the stations, just feel like shit, awful. And that's probably part of the reason why I was so sore also. And my legs were dead. My lungs were dead. Like I felt like I was glued to the ground on the burpees. Um, but it worked out. I don't know why exactly it did. Maybe just because of the psychology of it all. I think also a big factor had to do with the fact that like I think Ronkovich, like you usually is never that close to me, and I think he just went out balls to the wall, which he usually doesn't do. So I was just like, he left the sled push at the same time as me. And then I was just like, fuck this. And I just gunned it. And I think I gained about 5 to 8 seconds every station after that until I had, around a minute lead near the end. But that got me pissed also. So it was a double reason.
I think that's the sort of thing that maybe we'll see. Uh, you hadn't qualified at that point for the World Championships, but with these majors, people like Megan, for example, had already qualified, so they can take those risks, right, in a race and try and push it and experiment and see what happens. So maybe we'll see it more and more
Yeah.
in the two to come and all. Um,
Yeah.
you mentioned the burpees as well. Like you described it just then as your mistake on the burpees. Like you got some penalties there. A few people have asked me to ask you about this. So, do you feel those penalties were unfair? Was it for the hand placement, and will you change your technique going forward as well?
Yeah, I mean, I made a video about this and I said, what am I going to do the difference? I think the biggest thing that I noticed is just like whatever. They were probably out of line. And you know what? I'll take that on the chin. And I rather than sitting here and saying no, I'm just going to accept the fact that I probably was doing something that I shouldn't have and I'm trying to go for world records and I'm pushing you know, a little bit like as close to the edge as possible. And the thing that I'm going to have to do is just work on my mobility and so that I can keep my hands closer to myself rather than just like the elastic response to my body kind of pushing my hands out. Cause I do a double hand touch. I do doom, doom, and I go wide. And what ends up happening is I go here and then my hands go up a little bit. And I don't think that they're unfair based on my result, but the video, like I'll show you this video, and I sent this to Minter right afterwards, and I was like, yo, like you can shit on me and I get it, but the thing that I was like really having a trouble with, I was like, everybody else is doing this shit way, way worse. And like, if you watch this video, watch the guy basically doing he's like running and as he walks and goes, like these guys, nobody else was paying to these other people and they're paying attention to me exclusively. I was like, let's just have a little bit more of a fair experience next time. Um, so I'm willing to take all the heat, but it should be dispersed as well. Like I watch content afterwards, and there's basically people like walking on course. Like the step up thing, like whatever, it's a strategy. But if you watch the people, almost all of them step up and then move their feet like an extra, like half a foot to a full foot length and then jump forward, or they do it like with different feet at the same time. Is my technique better? Probably not. Whatever.
Right.
Burpees is probably the only thing in HYROX that really just catches a lot of shit. So it's like going to be targeted for everybody. And unless they're willing to like be completely anal about them, they either have to change the movement, accept a little bit of sloppiness, or improve their coach judging.
Mm-hmm. Um,
Yeah.
someone else has asked about your burpee, like your performance on the burpees. So you don't use that step up technique, which I think people traditionally would think of as like helping to conserve energy, like stop your heart rate jacking up so much. You don't seem to need to do that. Yours is more like a frog type technique, if you like.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like, are you just doing like thousands of these in training? Is that how you've got so good at them? What do you put it down to?
No, not at all. I don't really train them. I don't really train these movements at all until like as I said, like it really gets closer to the thing. Um, I don't know, man. I couldn't really give you a super solid answer other than the fact that I'm just super fit. Like I have done a lot of movements and a lot of training over time to build this body that just really, really responds well to holding tension and intensity over time. Where a lot of these guys need to relax during the burpees. My body is just charged up and strong enough just to slap into the ground and do a plyometric push it up out every single time. And I'd rather just get the burpees done rather than do that stupid step up thing. And I may even adjust my training now that we're focusing more on running. I may sit down with my coach and be like, listen, let's spend 4 weeks doing half of our intervals every other second, every other round, and just test out which form is better. And we may change it. And I don't have any ego in this thing. I'd rather just see times than anything else.
Okay. Um, Earlier in this conversation, you mentioned about in the lead up to Barcelona, you basically did a HYROX every week.
Yeah.
Um, and you mentioned that on this podcast last time you were on, and I think it caused some confusion with some people because there's the typical like don't do a HYROX too often advice. You know, people like are typically doing sims and that too often, and then you came on and said like you did that in the run up to Barcelona, and I think that some people took that as that's exactly what I need to do.
Yeah. I have a funny
It,
story, I'll tell you.
in my mind, like it's because you've got years of like fitness base behind you and experience and everything like that, and your body is able to do that and recover from that.
Yeah.
And so, like, you are different from a lot of people. Would you agree with that? And yeah, can you talk about it some more?
I think it's a terrible idea for the average person. I think it's a
Okay.
terrible idea for most people in Elite 15. I was just in a position where I did not have many other options. And I was willing to make the sacrifice of somewhat non-ideal training to accelerate myself up to speed. There was a lot of like anger inside of all that as well. Like I was listening to all the commentary, and a lot of people were just like, "Oh, Hunter McIntyre is lucky he got out of the sport. There's a whole new field of talent that they've raised the bar." And I was like, "Fuck these guys," and I just went hard. And it was like I wasn't consulting with a coach. I was consulting with nobody. I just was consulting with myself. And now that I have so much more time to build up to this, I'm not doing a HYROX every weekend right now. I have a lot more time and I'm developing it properly. So I wouldn't suggest it to anybody. Like things that I would suggest to somebody instead, I was like, go run for 30 minutes or bike for 60 minutes and then do a half a HYROX at the end at above speed. So put yourself a little bit tired, going into it, and then do it to the first four stations or the second four stations at speed. And it's less volume of intensity, but it's more volume of duration. And what your body doesn't understand is it doesn't like know what volume is or what weight is. It can only feel weight. It's blind to what it's doing. So in reality, you can get your heart rate up in much safer ways, meaning spending time on the bike or just doing running or skier. And it's like, that kind of stuff. But when I was doing all those HYROX, I remember I would go to bed and sweat in my bed every single night. I was way overtrained, but at the same time, I needed to slap myself into shape.
Right, right. What was your weight race weight for Stockholm? Someone's Philip Brady's asked me to ask you. You said on your pod a little while ago you were 20 pounds over your race weight from last season. So what were you at Stockholm, and how does that compare to like Barcelona and Manchester?
I was about 205 to 208. It just depends, like, but I always give that 3 pound variance because a good bathroom session could change it all. But uh, uh, like I'll give you an example. In Birmingham, I was 216. I was really heavy. If you look at the pictures and difference, like I was heavy, heavy. And Barcelona, I was probably 204. And then at World Championships, I was probably 200. But if you look at me in I think probably the best shape I ever have been in for HYROX, but not necessarily the best results I've ever had in HYROX, was in 2022. Like in April, I was like 196, and at World Championships, I was 197. And it cost me so much less to do the work. If you think about the lineup of the three guys that won Chicago, all of them are between 178 and 183. At the time they raced in Chicago, I was 215. So yeah, it's like it's a significant amount of weight. I'm almost 30 pounds heavier than these guys. And that's because of just accumulation of years of weight, but I would not suggest to anybody to race at this weight.
You think like you've talked about wanting to get 52 this year, you think you have to get to like 195, for example, pounds
Yeah.
to do that, yeah?
Yeah, you should read this book, Racing Weight, if you guys haven't. Like, that's a really easy way to understand how much weight impacts your results. And there's what's called like the power to weight ratio axis, where if you like study cycling and you find out about the watts to the amount of watts produced versus kilos, like there's probably a formula that I'm trying to find in HYROX where we could find the number of who's going to have the best results at World Championships. And you can't go too below, but I bet you at 195, I can still lift just as much weight, but I have far less force to generate to travel forward, which is great. So I'm on it every single day. I'm working with nutritionists. I'm fasting, all this kind of stuff. I'm dialed, baby. You guys are in for a fucking hurting. It's gonna be a miserable season the back half of this year for you guys.
I was going to ask you about like your thoughts on the competition, and like you mentioned the guys in Chicago who set, and I know all these courses are different, but they set some very fast times over there in Chicago, and then like obviously yourself and Alex in Stockholm. Um, yeah, what's your thoughts on the competition this year? Do you feel like you've got more competition for that world title this year than maybe you did in last year, for example?
Mm, not really. Like, there's new people, there's new faces, and times are going up, but like all I have to do is I just went from 54 to 53. So then I just moved the line further down the street from where they were. The goalpost has moved. And if I get into the 52s, I think it's still just as big of a lead as it was last year. And everyone's getting talented. I have got nothing bad to say about these guys. I think they're all very, very talented, but I would be lying to you to say that I do not think that I'm going to demolish everybody again this year. My goal is to walk away from this sport with just a clean record for the rest of my career. And however it's necessary, however many seconds or minutes I beat him by, it's not like I'm hung up on it. Obviously, the biggest margin is the best margin, but I'm just going to focus on winning.
Where if you get down to like 52, for example, where do you think that's going to come from in the race? Is it just across the board? Is it mainly in your running? Is there a specific station you're looking at?
I think that I've already maximized the first half of the race. I think I have to just focus on running. And if I just clean up my lunges and wall balls, like I am at the point where I can go unbroken on wall balls if I'm just dialed in. So If you think about it, I dropped it twice during Stockholm. Let's just say each of those times is 5 seconds. So that takes me from a 32, 23 minutes and 23-second wall balls down to a 3:13. So you're 10 seconds off there. The lunges, like I just watched myself on film. If I could just pick up my cadence by even a half a second per rep or a quarter a second per rep, and you've got like 40 something lunges, it adds up. And like it's like those things will just clean themselves up and then running. I'm planning on taking off 5 to 8 seconds per 1,000 by the end of the year.
Right. You mentioned like you're aiming for a clean record in HYROX, and I've heard you talk before about like aiming for all the records. Do you have plans in the doubles and relay and so on still?
Yeah, Anas and I are running doubles this weekend. I had that guy come over to my house yesterday and we did a test workout and we just beat ourselves silly. And we got very, very fast. So, hey, no guarantees, but Anas is a freak at running. And I said, dude, just do your running and I'll do the stations and we'll get it. Because I think they moved the needle by an extra 10 seconds or so at World Paleo and
Hmm.
Rich Ryan.
Yeah,
So that's attainable. That's for sure attainable. Like based off of where I was with John Wynn in Birmingham, like we can get that. No problem.
so that's in LA this coming weekend.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, these are all secondary goals. Like if they show up and they fit in the mix, like that's great. Um, Anas, I really do like the guy. He'll probably become a training partner of mine for next year to help me, start to pull away on those seconds on the run. Like, I bet you that guy is probably still like a 420 miler and he still got me by a good 15, 20 seconds in the miles. So all those repeats, he's going to kick my ass. But all I need is a little bit of a target in front of me. And even if I can just get a little bit quicker because someone's kicking my ass, it'll make a big difference.
Nice. What
Yeah.
about what about the mixed doubles? You got any plans for that?
It just depends, man. I mean, everybody's kind of got so many schedules. It's pretty crazy the amount everybody's racing right now. It seems like way more than it was last year. I think everyone's like so excited. Like I was planning on racing with Meg in Dallas, but then I didn't end up going, and then I'm going to Manchester. So if she wanted to show up, I'd probably race with her. And then I think relays, like there's all these rumors that relays is going to have a championship at the Worlds this year, but I don't know. These are all kind of like sprinkles and cherries on top type things. So whatever fits in, fits in. But I would be nice to get all the records this year. It's all very, if I show up, I think it's very available. It's just when we can all show up at a race.
Yeah, yeah. What's your
Yeah.
you talked about people racing a lot, and what's your thoughts on the elite system this year, like with the four majors and then the world championships? Like, you happy with the setup at the moment? And like, you didn't race in Chicago. Are you planning on racing the remaining majors?
I'm entirely confused by it, but like I think I just was talking to a friend of mine. She said that she's planning on qualifying in LA this weekend in open weight for world championships, but isn't championships all pro weight? World
At the world
championships.
championships, it will be pro
Yeah.
weights. Yeah, yeah.
So
But
you
you
can
can
qualify
qualify. Yeah,
through an open. Like that doesn't make any sense. And that's not even the elite field. And I just sit there and I scratch my head. I'm like, well, that doesn't make any freaking sense. And then uh, you think about I kind of said this earlier. I decided to come to Europe early this year so that I could focus on training through the middle of my season rather than doing it right then for travel. So I'm not going to go to Vienna now, and I'm just going to focus on getting my volume up. Because if you look, I could show you on my Strava, like I was training, and then I had this huge dump down. So like this is not like ideal. If you look at like these graphs for training, it's not the ideal situation. And for results, like you see that graph right there, I went up and then I started to dump down. You know, that's the opposite of what you want to be doing right now. Like that's not a specific load, but that's a 3 week deload because of the travel. And you got to figure that it's not smart. So, this would be my advice to anybody who's competing this year. You can like have these highs and they may feel really amazing and you may pick up a couple dollars here and there, but you have to focus on the end goal, which is winning world championships. And a lot of these guys are really great in season racers and then they all fall apart at championships. Like Ryan Kent had a bunch of amazing results last year and then he took fourth at world championships. Outside of myself, he's probably the most talented athlete, but I think he just sets up his season wrong. And, that sucks. Like, I'm not trying to diminish him, but if I was coaching him, I'd be like, hey, man, quit fucking around with all these events and, showing up to decafits and this and that and the other thing. Um, so I specifically look at that graph, even though it's not direct answer, I can just see it and I'm like, I'm screwing up, dude. I need the line to go up right now.
Mhm.
So I probably won't travel very much the rest of the season. I may have a couple work trips, but Elite 15, I'm only showing up to DC to shit on some compadres.
Okay. Um, After Chicago in particular, there was Rylan really sparked it, but like a discussion on drug testing and bringing drug testing into the sport and how it's not a rule at the moment. What are your thoughts on that area? Do you think that it is something that HYROX need to be bringing in?
From a professional standpoint, yes. From like it's a new business that's getting its feet off the ground and every dollar counts. Like I'd rather them take that money and put it into media than them put it into drug testing if they say that there's somewhat of a budget, restriction. And there's a lot of people that have this kind of soft hand response. They're like, it's very tricky. It's very tricky how to handle someone's, just taking someone's, human product off of them. It's a very, dangerous area to be around. I'm like, well, just have them sign a contract where they waive all rights. They do it in Olympic sports. Like if you want to contend at a certain level, you give up the rights to have access to your pee or blood or hair or whatever the hell it is. But being these people that throw their hands up in the air and always like to complain about stuff, it's like, what's the point, guys? Just if people are on drugs, like I think people that are complaining about drugs are people that are scared of drugs. Like I'm not fucking scared of drugs. I'll smash anybody on drugs. And I just think that there's nobody really in my circle right now that I think is taking drugs. And even if they were, they're not beating me, so I don't have an issue with it. And it's unfortunate, but the reality is this is a new business and every dollar counts. And I know that they went through a problem where they barely even survived COVID. So they're probably looking at a couple things where this may be a 2-year development for them. But as of right now, it's not a concern. Like I contacted, Christian last year. I was like, I'll pay for drug testing. And, I was kind of pushing towards it a little bit, but then I just thought to myself, I was like, what's the fucking point? Like, this is not my job. I'm just going to focus on racing.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You're a you're world record holder, you're world champion. What's motivating you now? Like, does it what's pushing you? Is it the thought of becoming world champion again? Is that really driving you? Is it the business side of things? What's the motivating force at the moment?
Um, it's a plethora of things, but I would say this. You learn more about yourself and struggle than anywhere else in the world. Sitting in a field of flowers is not a field of lessons. It's the hardship in life that gives you the greatest opportunities to learn about yourself. And every single year, I'm not focusing on like winning. I'm focusing on setting a new record. And that's the most important thing to me. Like obviously world championships is really important, but the amount of work that I have to put into myself with the amount of businesses that I'm running now and the amount of life that I have going on and continuing to move the needle, I have to become a stronger man in every sense of the word. And it's it's a beautiful process. It really is. You should have met the guy 3 years ago before COVID. I was a fucking savage, but this version of Hunter McIntyre would fold that man like a little piece of paper. And it's not only because I'm stronger physically, but because of mentally. And my easiest days are racing, honestly.
They really, really are. My training is far harder. My work is far harder. And I want to learn what it takes to just move the needle so far that I have to study myself constantly, have this level of honesty where I look in the mirror every single day and have to just remove pieces of myself that are not worth it. Relationships, friendships, business, anything that gets in the way of like, the true trajectory of where I want to go, I have to let go. And there used to be like I'm a big believer in the idea that a version of you has to die for another version of you to live. And what I've become over the past couple of years of pushing at this level is something that I would really admire. Like I would be so excited as a young guy to meet somebody like myself. And where I'm going after this is very important that I learn every piece of myself at the best of my ability so that I can really help support the communities that I want to help when I retire. Because my next chapter will be writing books, public speaking, educating, and expanding upon the athletic market. And I'm my biggest test subject.
Do you foresee other sports after HYROX as well for you, or will it be like once you leave this, you're out?
I think I'm out. I mean, there's always going to be a part of me that like shows up to things, but I'd rather become almost like Red Bull and find the next generation of superstars where I sponsor skateboarders, HYROX athletes, whatever. And I'm like, dude, you got talent. What do you need to become a star? Because that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
And like, I think, I live on top of mountains. There's a quote from Hunter S. Thompson, you won't find reasonable men on top of tall mountains. Like, I live on top of a mountain. This is not a place where you can raise a family and like have a community. There's nobody else around except for me up here. And, people visit, but people don't stay. So I need to let go of this version of my life and go be part of my family again and go be part of my community again. And that's where I really ultimately want to go. But for right now, I'll be here until the job's done.
Are you happy doing this now? What you're doing?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I can honestly say I learn more about myself every single day. And if I was unhappy, I don't have any ego attachment. Like I was willing to let go of HYROX years ago. I'm willing to let go of it now. But I'm happy. Like this is crazy, crazy cool. Everything that I want to do, I just do. And there's sacrifices that are involved in it. But I can honestly say, like, I'm not the kind of person that needs to let people know that I'm awesome. Like I've already figured that out. So I everything I do, like after I'm done with you, I'm going down the hill to go meet with guys and go ride bikes in the mountains of Malibu for hours. Like every time I'm on that bike, I laugh the whole time. I'm like, this is crazy. We're riding through the hills past mansions, and I have random pet friends of like giraffes and stuff that I say hi to every time I go out there. They're not my pets, obviously, but I consider them to be my own. And I live in this fantasy world. And I think a big part of like why I continue to do it is proving that it's a possibility. Because I was in a position when I was younger where they told me, and like I was meant to be on all I was on all these pills, and I was then sent to rehab and sent to like jails where like just kept on telling me like, dude, your life's basically over. You're never gonna make it. Like you're a fuck up. And I was like, I don't think so. So every time I hope my principal gets on Instagram and he goes, I fucked up. And I hope my old teachers and my old teammates and other people were like, oof, we bet on the wrong horse. And there's part of my life that has a little bit of that element in it, but it's nice. I feel absolutely free and I feel compelled to continue to do it at the level that I'm doing it, even a higher one.
Good, good. How long do you think you've got in HYROX or in sport in general?
I think I could get away with this for another 5 years, to be honest. Like my greatest mentor is Hobie Call, and I think he won the last world championship at 40 or 41. And he didn't just like show up, he wrecked everybody. And then the following season, he won every single race except for world championships. So there's no lack of opportunity if you stay dialed. I would pleasantly like to retire in the following year. Like do this world championships, do the following world championships, and then let go. If there was some opportunity that was so unfathomably amazing, um, I would continue. But at the same time, yeah, I think we've done enough.
Okay. All right. I asked on my Insta stories yesterday if people had questions for you, and about 1 million came in asking about your variations of like what your running training looks like and so on. But is there like, rather than getting into all the nitty gritty, is there anything that you feel like you do on a running training perspective that is different to what 90% of the HYROX athletes are out there are doing? Are you doing more threshold? Are you doing more speed work? Are you doing more zone two? Like, is there anything you feel is like vastly different?
The one thing that's been consistent with me is I spend a lot of time in the off season running in the mountains. I'm getting, you know, every single month, tens of thousands of feet of elevation. And I start the season like a heavy brick, like 215 pounds, 96 kilos, 97 kilos, running in the mountains like a water buffalo. And I just build this like very, very strong engine so that when I all of a sudden go to flat, I'm not like running, I'm literally propelled forward because I have so much plyometric strength for running like thousands of meters up. And like that's a big piece of it. Like I live in the mountains for that reason. And then, I don't have this ego wrapped around miles. Like I talk to so many of these people, they're like, "Oh, I run this many miles a week." I was like, "I actually train this many hours a week." So, like I look at the number of you just do all these studies, you're like, "Why is it every single really really high level athlete is training this many hours?" So you just like try to get up there without falling apart. So if it's plus or minus 10%, that's fine. If you're 20% off of that, then you're clearly not elite. You're just not doing it right. But it's plus or minus, it's not a big deal. So I just stick at that hour. And then when it comes to the specific runs, like that's it. Like your whole week should literally design itself all the way around the specific run that is going to give you the biggest stimulus to your results. And I think way too many people are just doing all compromised running all the time, where it's like I do a lot of mountain running. Then I'd start to pick up some like road running where I'm not even focusing on like threshold. I'm like kind of just like I start my road running season probably like 7 minute miles. And by the end of my road running season, I'm running around 6 minute miles to high fives without really feeling that stressed. And then all of a sudden I get into speed season where it's very, very specific. And like I have to be the guy who's able to run those paces. And if I didn't do part one, then I'm not ready for part three, if you get what I'm trying to say. And I think so many people are like, I get DMs from dudes like, I did my first HYROX. I want to be Elite 15. I'm like, do you even know what that fucking means? Like, you ran a 75, and the difference between a 75 and a 55 is decades of work. Like you're not going to like I think the guy Rylan, why he had these like crazy results, he went from like a 61 to a 68 to a 58 to a 55. He was just figuring his shit out. But what he had been doing for the package was like elite level cycling, very, very high level, like champion level, Spartan racing and stuff like that. So he was just figuring out his true north. He wasn't like just getting started. Where these other guys, like I'll have people join my coaching business and they want results like today. So if you didn't do junior varsity running and then get to the varsity team in high school and then potentially do some collegiate running, you are not going to just jump into the boat with us and start getting going. So I think anybody I would give suggestions to, and this isn't like I have to say it to myself all the time, like Anas, that guy's like, hey man, let's start doing workouts, 2400s at the track. And I was like, dude, no, like I'm not ready for it. Like you are ready for it because that's all you've done your entire career. I can't show up and start doing track workouts with you until maybe February. And I don't have any ego wrapped in it anymore. Like, obviously, I want to go beat the shit out of Anas and learn from him, but I think it's really, really important that you guys have a system and either you find it through a coach or have the strength to say no to yourself of like building up periodization. And eventually I will tell you guys this, miles is very important. Like at the end of my season, I'm doing about 100K a week. But I have let go of all the cycling that I was doing at the beginning of the year, and I've been able to slowly build it up. If you guys are not running below 34 on a 10K, you're nowhere near elite 15 level. Like I'm going to be close to probably like a 32 level by the end of the season, 32 flat. And like those are just some metrics you guys need to go out there and just have honesty with yourself. Like anytime someone comes to coach with me, I give them a 30-minute time trial test and I just say, "Hey man, like your 30-minute time trial test came back and you're so far off. You need to have this honest conversation with yourself. Do you want to continue to work with me knowing what you know now?" And a lot of people will lie to themselves and then they'll go right to the next coach and be like, "Hey, I really want to work with you," because they'll never have that honesty. Like my coach, who's been a great consultant to me, Rich Diaz, dude, like even when I have my best results, he goes, "You still run like shit. You need to come work with me." Like he will give me a hard time no matter what. And it's an honest answer. So like I'm always refining my craft. He's another one of the people that if you guys ever want run consulting, like I'm not the guy to give it to you, but if you can spend time with that guy, Rich Diaz, he's like those rare people that used to make samurai swords at the highest level. The guy, like, everybody has like heard rumors of the person, but you don't know how to get to him. Like, remember in Kill Bill, they were trying to go get to that sword. Like he is the sword master for running. He's the best person I've ever met on the planet. And that's another secret. Like, I probably run better than a lot of the people I compete against because I spent so many years working with him.
Okay. You mentioned like you're a bit 32 for a 10K. People love this shit, but like where do you think you're at for a 5K at the moment?
Maybe like 16-10.
Okay. Okay. And
Yeah, like
lifting wise, are you deadlifting, squatting, anything like that? You got any numbers around that?
I'll tell you the truth of what I can do, but what I don't do anymore is these numbers. But if you put a bar on my back, I'll squat three and a half plates. So I'll squat 365, 375 still at any point in time for a back squat. I never like back squat. I think it's a super stupid idea for the most part. You could train it off season, but in season, do not back squat. I'll box squat all the time.
Sorry,
Bench press.
can I just sorry, why are you so anti-back squat?
So you got to figure like everything, as I said, has to be centered towards your most important emphasis. If you are really weak, you should be back squatting. That's why I have a 20 rep back squat program that I sell to people where I'm like, this is the honesty answer. Like, you're so weak, you can't touch the sleds. I was like, go back squat for 8 weeks straight. Don't do any running because you cannot run after back squatting, especially if you're putting the right amount of work in. Okay. Just the way that it affects your hips, your quads, your back. It just running is this kind of supple motion. Heavy squatting is a very tense motion. There's a reason why powerlifters suck at running. And there's a reason why really great runners suck at powerlifting. It's like it's so far in the opposite direction. Why try to have this ego where you're doing both? And it took me years to figure this out. And there's a reason why I'm like a big believer when I have these conversations with people. There's what's called lab science and field science. There's people who are in labs right now being like, the most efficient way to just to deliver a hip drive is by doing back squats, this much reps percentage, and blah, 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 blah. And then but then there's also field science. Like none of you guys have been doing this for decades in the field and trained so many athletes and trained yourself so many times. You're taking this one little petri dish of information and trying to say that, and it's not fucking true. So back squat, we're still going to be able to hold tension, extreme amounts of tension, tons and tons of weight, but it doesn't deliver this crippling amount of soreness that is going to prevent you from running at high capacity. So if you watch me in a lot of my videos, you'll see me putting like 5 plates on the bar and squatting to like 6 inches above parallel. And then all of a sudden I get to the sled push or the row or the ski erg and all these things, and I'm moving faster than everybody else. And it's like the power's there, but I haven't detracted from the rest of myself. That was a long-winded answer of just don't fucking back squat in season. The deadlift, I'll deadlift 550. Shoulder press, I can almost shoulder press 2 plates. Pull-ups, I can do chin-ups with 3 plates, like 345s in between my legs and stuff like that. Like I get as strong as I possibly can, and then I let go. I I feel stupid. I was training really, really hard for Murph for a while, and then I pulled my back. I will tell everybody right now, the 2 times in the past 4 years that I have really fucked myself up is training for Murph. So don't get an ego and watch me train for Murph and then put a weight vest on and just start doing the stuff that I do. Because I even watch videos myself and be like, I'm going to go put a weight vest on. And then I screw myself up all the time. So be very, very careful with high repetition, above body weight movements. It will beat the shit out of you. But those are my numbers. I think the biggest indicator of who's going to be extremely successful at HYROX is a combination of a 10K run and a 5K ski. If you can find the person who's doing that, you've probably found the person that's going to win HYROX. And I bet you my combination of my 10K run and my 5K ski is still 2 minutes better than everybody else. And that's why I beat everybody about 2 minutes when it comes to these things.
What do you reckon your 5K ski is at then?
Probably like a 142 pace. So maybe a little faster, 140 pace. So what does that add up to? A 7-minute 2K is 145 pace. So multiply that times 2 is at 14, and then another 3 minutes and 30 seconds is 17:30. So I'm probably about a 16 high.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Awesome. I spoke to Chris Hinshaw recently on the podcast, and I think you spent some time with him. But he said towards the end, one day he'd love to see a race between you and Jeff Adler, who, for people listening, won the CrossFit Games this year. If he had a chance to train for HYROX and work more on his running,
I'll destroy him.
That was my question.
I mean that in the most polite way possible, dude. I mean, you got to just look at these people. If anybody is just like a person who likes to study sport, look at the difference between the body type of a shot putter and a javelin thrower. Technically, they're both propelling objects through time and space, but the levers, the length, the body weight is entirely different. So Jeffrey Adler is delivering energy with his body through time and space in a functional capacity, as am I. But I'm probably 8 inches taller than Jeffrey Adler, and my capacity to run at high levels is so much better. It's the same reason where if Jeff and I did Fran, Jeff is if you look at it, is probably having 6 inches of left travel than I do for every rep, 6 to 10 inches of less travel. So if you think about that over 90 repetitions, you're looking at probably like 80 feet of less travel. And same exact thing with just my stride and my length of everything on the sport. He just won't be able to hang. There's a reason why in HYROX, if you look at everybody on the podium, they're all 6 feet plus. Every single one of us is 6 feet plus and lean. If you look at everybody on the podium at the CrossFit Games, they're all about 5'6" to 5'9". So no offense to Jeff Adler. Like, I have the absolute most admiration for him whatsoever, but I think that's like a cute conversation that CrossFitters are all still holding on to, where they try to always pretend that CrossFitters will win in all circumstances. Like, I went to the CrossFit Games a couple of years ago because I knew that I could win about 3 of the workouts out of the 12. I do not pretend that I'm the barbell guy, the walk on my hands guy, all that kind of stuff. And like, dude, I'll give you an example. Sam Briggs, the cardio machine of HYROX, came to HYROX a handful of years ago, and she came dead last. And that's nothing against Sam Briggs, another beast.
Who is there anyone out there in the world of sport that you think would give it a good crack, or you'd be worried about coming in? Or
any cross-country skier that made it to the Olympic trials or Olympic level that was a very strong person and didn't want to do it anymore could come in and probably create a very big splash.
Okay.
Yeah, like that would be a bad day for all of us.
We just a couple more questions, but we saw Dorian Yates in reception at the hotel in Stockholm, and I know you were chatting to him. Is he your, like, if I asked you who your sporting heroes are, who your idols are, is he one of them, and who else would be on that list?
I think in bodybuilding it was him him and Mike Mentzer. They're both in the high intensity training. They had a very different methodology than the rest of the field, which I believe in, which is intensity. Mac is trumps volume every single time when it comes to adaptation. If I look at cardio athletes, I look at like Bjorn Diali, this guy I interviewed the other day, Eric Murray for rowing. Like they're both on a list in front of me every single time I race, do my workouts. They're on a list. I look at strongmans like Bill Kazmaier, just these like freaks, people like you. I don't know if you ever watched Strongman back in the day, Bill Kazmaier, but he wrecked people. And you're just like that. Every time I grab the sled, I'm like Bill Kazmaier, Bill Kazmaier. So those are my biggest inspirations. Bjorn Diali is probably my biggest inspiration of anybody. Like that guy just gutted himself. I don't fall down after my races, and that pisses me off. Like I want to fall down dead after my races like he does.
You just said they're on a list in front of you. Like, so when you're working out, you're thinking of those guys, are you? Like you're trying to idolize them or imagine
I race
you are
against
them?
them. I
Okay.
race against them. I race against them. I race with them. Race through them. So I just have it on a wall. Like I don't have this like beautiful view. I just have stickers on the wall, and I'm on the treadmill, just running as hard as I can, saying their name. I'm like, "Fuck you, Bjorn Diali. Fuck you, Bill Kazmaier." And I'm just like, ah. And over and over and over again, I'll say those guys' names thousands of times throughout the year.
Okay.
And it's sport at that level is just simplifying things. You have to have like a mantra, a saying. You just have to vaporize the rest of the world and just get yourself down to this simple thing. And that's at least been my answer. So yeah, dude, those are my champions for sure. Everyone should have their idols.
All right, nice. All right. Well, thank you for this. This has been brilliant. People want to follow you, find out more about you and what you're doing. Where should we send them?
Dude, you can find us if you just type in Hunter McIntyre on any social media channel. We're always having a lot of fun. So it's worth the visit. It's worth the views. We've got a lot of great things going on in business as well. So if you guys are interested in anything that has to do with HYROX, we've pretty much got something to help support you there. So we do appreciate you guys showing up. We do appreciate you listening, and more to come.
All right. Awesome. All right. Thank you for this. Appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing what you can do for the rest of the season.
It's gonna be wild, my friend. Thank you for calling.
All right. Perfect. Cheers.